Welcome to the Geekcentric podcast, and welcome to our spoiler-free review for the first 4 episodes of the upcoming Disney Plus series, Andor. That's what a reckoning sounds like. Hello, I'm Kevin. If you're joining us for the first time, we are Geekcentric, a podcast covering the world of movies, TV shows, toys, collectibles, gaming, and all things geek-centric. Joining me for today's review, they're not quite spies, saboteurs, or assassins, but they've all done wonderful things on behalf of the Geekiverse. And today, we've all chosen a side in working against the dark. Nate, Darcy, our Star Wars experts, our usuals. Guys, thank you so much for joining me. How are we doing ahead of this pretty big review here? It was, quite the debut for Disney Plus to drop this many episodes as a premiere for us.
Yeah, I mean, I think many Bothans died getting these episodes to us. That's a deep cut Mon Mothma reference for all our wonderful
that reference.
Hey, there you go. Yeah, man, I'm stoked. I think it once obviously we're going to say spoiler free, but I think once everyone sees these 3 episodes, they'll kind of understand, and maybe even more so once the 4th episode is out, why these 3 were released together. Because I think they really do fit together in a nice a little intro arc.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. The 3 definitely went down much better as a 1, 2, 3 consumer wise. So. Other than that, I'm really looking forward to talking about this very different show. It's definitely much different tone than what we've got with the recent live-action Star Wars stuff.
Oh, 100%, and I think that'll probably be a lot of what we talk about today. But just before we get a bit deeper into things here, as I mentioned at the top of the show, we'll be sharing our spoiler-free thoughts on the live-action Star Wars series Andor, which premieres on Disney Plus on September 21st. So very soon after probably you're listening to this very podcast, it'll be doing so with a 3-episode premiere. We actually got to see the first 4 episodes, but again, don't worry, we're not going to get into anything that you won't have a chance to see on the date of the premiere because, again, it's spoiler-free. But a huge thanks to our friends over at Disney Plus Canada for letting us check out these episodes ahead of its release. In case you don't know, Andor is a spy thriller from Lucasfilm, filmed over 2 12-episode seasons, which takes place roughly 5 years before the events of Rogue One, a Star Wars story. The era featured in Andor is filled with danger, deception, and intrigue, where Cassian will embark on the path that is destined to turn him into a rebel hero. Andor presents Star Wars from a different perspective, focusing on everyday people whose lives are affected by the Empire. The decisions they make have real consequences, and the stakes for them and the galaxy couldn't be higher. The series stars Diego Luna, Adria Arjona, Genevieve O'Reilly, Stellan Skarsgård, Denise Goff, Kyle Soller, and Fiona Shaw. The show is directed by Benjamin Caron, who's directed episodes of The Crown and Sherlock, by Toby Harns, who's directed episodes of Black Mirror and Sherlock, and Susanna White, who's directed episodes of, you guessed it, nothing, because this is her directorial debut. The show was created by and primarily written by Tony Gilroy, who, of course, wrote Rogue One. And much like Rogue One, this show has such a unique feel within the world of Star Wars, especially compared to any of the previous Star Wars shows we've seen on Disney Plus so far. So let's just sort of get right in. I think, it being so different is one of the things that makes it stand, or just that really worked for me as a viewer.
Yeah, I think it's, I think Star Wars hasn't really dived into the concepts around good and evil on both sides. And I think that's what I loved about Rogue One, and it kind of touched upon that, and I think this series is obviously emphasizing that. And I think it's interesting. The first 3 episodes, I will say The pacing is also very different for what we're used to with these Star Wars live action series. But again, I think the biggest thing that I needed to kind of remind myself as I was going through these episodes was we have 12 of them. And not only that, but we have another 12 on the way. So for me, as much as I started to sort of I was put off a little bit by the pacing. It sort of got, as soon as I finished that third episode, I was like, oh, no. I see what they're doing here. And I feel like it's gonna be worth it in the end, because honestly, I remember when we were watching Boba Fett, and I kept saying during our watch club for Boba Fett, like, dude, I want the Game of Thronesification of Star Wars. And while I don't think this is as explicit as Game of Thrones, I feel like this is as close as we've ever gotten, and I'm really happy for it.
Yeah, it's definitely a slow burn of a show, but I totally agree with you in that it's Games of Thrones scale or style with its political intrigue that will be following throughout the course of this story. And I am really excited to see what type of story we're going to get, because again, those first 3 episodes set up nicely for what is to come in the season. And again, it's so unique and so different than what we've already seen in the Star Wars universe. So I can only say positive things about that.
Yeah, 100%. It's refreshingly different, but you do need to just sort of be patient with it. I think if you can set aside 2 hours and watch all 3 episodes as an event, like they've planned it out. I didn't quite do that the first time I watched them, and so it did sort of take a long time for me to get into it, and I almost didn't completely just go, okay, I am down, until the last sort of chunk of the 3rd episode, where it was fine. Like, you really figure out what they're going to try and do with this, and you sort of get the essence of what the story's going to be. And so, yeah, if you can sit down, carve out like you're watching a movie and watch all 3, it slow builds right into like, holy cow, all of a sudden I want more. And I was so glad we got that 4th episode. We won't talk too much about that, right? Because we want to focus on what our viewers are going to be able to see on that big premiere day. But once episode 4 gets going, then it really hits into warp drive, and we're off and running with what the show is going to be about. And honestly, I'm super excited. It seems like it's going to be a lot of fun. But yeah, it's such a great job of really reintroducing us, I think, to the Cassian character, and they do a great job there.
It's really refreshing, and I think it's a testament to Diego Luna that, like, he doesn't skip a beat. Like, we are right back there with the Cassian that we knew from Rogue One, and it's intriguing because I think, we'll obviously get to see his journey from where he is at the beginning of this series to Rogue One. But to kind of see that he's a lot of it still the same. Like he's still very much that hardened, spy on the rebellion side. I think, Tony Gilroy's writing is what's really kind of propelling this story forward and really giving us that fresh aspect. There's an article on IGN, shout out to Ryan Leston, who wrote an article where he actually commented and apparently Andor's showrunner, Tony Gilroy, said that he wasn't too bothered about pleasing the fans. And I think that is another aspect about this that is refreshing. Are there Easter eggs? Yes. If you look hard enough, there absolutely are little tiny, teeny baby Easter eggs out there. But for the most part, this is very much Star Wars that doesn't feel like Star Wars. And in a weird way, I'm very happy about that as a Star Wars fan, which sounds crazy.
These are the kinds of Easter eggs that you find like 4 years later behind the couch. They're so well hidden that nobody found them during the hunt, and you just sort of stumble upon them later. But no, there's definitely there. This is unquestionably Star Wars, but this isn't Skywalker saga just shoveling down your throat here. This is very much sort of carving out its own little piece of this galaxy and telling a very different story from a very different perspective. And I think that's going to make the show stronger in the long run, because it's not relying on anything that we're overly familiar with. I think that'll keep us guessing a lot more. And yeah, again, anytime there's a prequel, I'm a little hesitant to get into that, but I think this is just such a fresh story that doesn't necessarily connect to a whole lot right now, that'll be enough of an intrigue for me to really be invested in everything going on.
For sure. I also like a lot of people on the internet too have a problem or being very vocal about, their trepidation with this prequel story because they know how the story is going to end with Rogue One and then the rest of the Skywalker saga. But like I said, this is such a refreshing take, and I think its strength really comes to show in the fact that they are able to introduce characters that you immediately want to know their story, and because they are so enthralling right off the bat, that I think really helps you want to know how or where these characters stand by the events of Rogue One. So I think that's where my investment's coming from more now, is who are these characters and how are they going to impact the rebellion going forward.
I'm right there with you, Darcy. I think a lot of folks who are maybe saying that have that sort of feeling online are probably looking at this as just the title character of Andor, but you're absolutely right. There's so many more incredible characters, both original characters and a returning character, couple returning characters in this series that are absolutely phenomenal, and I'm so excited to learn more about them, and I think the cast is thoroughly impressive. I think there's not a single moment with any of these characters, at least these main characters, that I sort of felt like, oh, I kind of wish they were portrayed by someone else, or I feel like they didn't quite hit what they were supposed to hit in that scene. Everyone is really doing a phenomenal job, and I think a standout for me would be Kyle Soller. I think is fantastic in this series as Cyril Karn. He's very much a tight-knit security guard kind of character or officer, and he's very he wants to do the best job he possibly can. It just sucks that he's working for a fascist regime, but he's the hero of his own story. And so, I love that we get to see him, but we also get to see moments where, because he is so strict and he is so serious, we get to see past his facade, and we get to see the fear start to come into this guy, where we're just like, oh my gosh, I actually feel bad for this enemy, which again in Star Wars is not something we get to do too often, especially for lower level Imperial forces. And I think that's part of what has me so excited. We have a very similar character in Denise Goff's character, who is introduced in episode 4, and she is again very similar situation, where we get to see kind of into the recesses of her mind and understand where she's coming from and what she'll do to kind of raise her own ranks, especially for her being surrounded by men. It's a really intriguing aspect to what they're bringing to Star Wars. And yeah, man, I'm so excited again to learn more about these characters that I had no idea existed, but are clearly going to be crucial to this conflict.
Yeah, once you get over the fact that Kyle Soller is not, in fact, the actor who plays Ramsay Bolton.
Yes, that's true. He does look like him. Yeah,
and especially because there are a few smaller characters from Game of Thrones that do have roles in the show as well. Mm-hmm. But no, I think you're absolutely right. He plays such an interesting type of villain, in that we're kind of used to the bad guys in Star Wars just having this bravado and this confidence and this overwhelming, just straight. They know what they want and they're going to get it, and they never show fear at any times. And he is very much the complete opposite of that. Almost his ambition reaches far beyond his abilities and his confidence in confronting certain situations. And so it is a really, really new, fresh take on that antagonist character in this universe.
And I mean, in these first 4 episodes, I'm already getting the sense that they're unlike Game of Thrones. It's funny, I know we keep bringing up Game of Thrones, but I introduced my dad to Game of Thrones recently, and he's almost done now. He binged the whole thing in 2 weeks or less. And so he'll often stop me and be like, oh, I'm so glad that character died. I hated that character. I hated them. And he's just really upset and mad. and I feel like this series is already giving me the sense that we're not going to have that. with these villains. And I think that's what is so refreshing and exciting, is that we aren't going to necessarily hate anyone. We're going to understand where they're coming from. And I think the true conflict, the true antagonist of this will be the conflict. I think the war itself is going to end up being what is technically our big bad. I do think we are going to get maybe like one overall baddie that we just maybe are like, okay, I really don't care for that guy or girl or whoever. But I do think that the emphasis of this story is to say, no. The war of Star Wars, which we're finally really getting to see, is the main villain.
That's a really awesome way, actually, of looking at everything that's going on. I will say another thing for me that stood out, and Nate, this is usually, I know your bag here. You love to generally talk about the music, and I'm finding what it's doing. It's doing something very similar that is happening over in the Rings of Power show.
Yes,
in that it keeps teasing all of these familiar themes. And so it'll play like one or two note, and you think you know where it's going, and then it completely goes in a different direction, and it almost leaves you wanting for those themes that you're so familiar with, but it's almost refreshing, and it's really neat, and it's just a really cool way of showing us that while we're back to where we want to think we're comfortable and we want to feel familiar, this is totally new territory, and I think that's such a cool way to use music to show that.
Well, just on the topic of that, too, I think you're mentioning how they keep playing these pieces of the theme kind of plays into what this show seems to be about, and about all these fragments and pockets of resistance across the galaxy that will eventually band together and become the rebellion. And I think that's why they're doing that with this music, is that we're seeing the very foundation of what we know as the rebellion come episode 4. So I think it's really cool that they're doing that even on the level of the music. So again, kudos to that.
Yeah, the theme song of this series changes with each intro, which is super intriguing. And I think, shout out to is it Nicholas Britell? Yeah, Nicholas Britell, who you might know from, he did the music for Winning Time. He's done the music for Succession. And so I think you're absolutely right, Darcy. Like this, the music is as varied as the characters that we're seeing on screen. And I think that's just a little sort of, again, I love when the music can help to inform the narrative, and in a subtle way, kind of in the back of your mind, you're just like, oh, wow, okay, this is not what I expected to hear in this moment, because this is also not what you expected to see from Star Wars. And I think that's so dope. I'm really enjoying this stuff.
And now from a visual perspective as well, I find I don't want to say that previous Disney Plus shows have looked cheap. That's certainly not what I mean, but they haven't quite looked, up to a movie standard that that you'd almost come to expect. And here, I don't know if it is because we're so much on the ground level that they're able to get away with things a bit more, but I don't know. This just the first 4 episodes that we've seen, though, it looks like a movie, in my opinion. It looks like we're back in Rogue One, right back into that world. It's amazing how they've been able to carry that over to the TV side more successfully than almost any Disney Plus show I've ever seen.
Absolutely. I think like obviously the volume has done so much for TV and for filmmaking, and it's a huge accomplishment from Lucasfilm. But at the same time, you can see the difference between scenes, from The Mandalorian and from, Obi-Wan and things like that were done on the volume in comparison to, actual hills in Scotland or wherever they're filming this, right? Like you can absolutely tell when things are that tangible. And I think it's going to be an interesting thing going forward with Star Wars to see where they do use the volume and where they do shoot on location, because I think you're absolutely right. I think the visuals and the look of this show are just as grounded as its narrative, and I think that's really important. I think it's going to kind of give Star Wars fans a taste of like, oh, this is like the movies again. This is like what Rogue One looked like. I kind of feel like that's all I want from Star Wars going forward, and then use the volume for certain instances, but not as your sort of main crutch, if you will, when making these projects, because honestly, dude, you're absolutely right, it looks so gorgeous.
And I think that's the same issue that has been going on in Star Wars since, The Phantom Menace, in that it just helps an actor so much when you're in a physical environment like that to just get more into your the performance that you're giving. And I know the advancements in all of those technologies have come a long way in the 23 years or whatever since Phantom Menace, but I think it still is so much better for an actor in their performance to be standing exactly where their character is supposed to be standing. I think it helps immensely.
I almost feel like they decided to, like, because they were going so different with the tone and the look and the characters and the story of this whole series, they're like, we'll give you something that you're familiar with, and that's the look of these practical sets and these practical effects, so that you can really feel like this world is lived in by these people across the galaxy. So I feel like that was almost intentional, because again, they're going so different in so many ways, that giving us those practical effects to just ground us in what we know and love already, I think it goes a long way for opening the door to get into this really meaty story.
There's probably going to be a lot of moments as a Star Wars fan that you're going to be watching this, if you're already a Star Wars fan, which, by the way, I don't think you need to be a Star Wars fan to watch this show. I think that's another plus there. But for hardcore Star Wars fans that are watching this show, you're going to feel a bit of a drought of Star Wars-isms in watching this. But there's at least within these first 4 episodes, there is one moment where something just happens. It's like it's not even a long experience, that you're just like, wow, like, okay, you feel it. You feel it so much more because, I guess it's like, what, distance makes the heart grow fonder? It kind of feels like that in that moment.
Yeah. Yeah, and just the sound of it is enough to bring tingles.
So good.
100%.
Can't wait.
100%. Now, we did touch on some of the acting performances that we've gotten here, but there are so many great ones. And I mean, obviously, Diego Luna is so good in this role that they've brought him back to give him his own show. Yeah. So I think that goes without saying. But I think, what works in Star Wars is kind of working with relative unknowns, just because that makes it feel that much more alien, that much more exotic. But it does help to have sort of that familiar grounding aspect every once in a while. And I think Stellan Skarsgård is absolutely that here. And, his character I think we've only just seen the surface of what he could do with this character. I think it's going to be like one of the most interesting characters we've seen in Star Wars in a long time.
Yeah, I love his performance. I can't wait to know more about it. And it seems like such a unique role to the Star Wars universe that, again, is very different, and only I think they knew who they were casting or looking for when they were writing this role, and he's bringing it to life perfectly.
And I would say the same thing for Genevieve O'Reilly. I mean, she's been Mon Mothma for now, over 17 years, but she is Mon Mothma. She's so intrinsically that character, and she does such a phenomenal job with her. And I'm so excited to kind of see, before the rebel leader. I'm so excited to see that part of her journey, and that's that story of her, under the eye of Emperor Palpatine, if you will. It's funny, we look at these characters, and a lot of them are living in dangerous situations or in very dangerous environments, but you would never think that one of the most dangerous places, or the one who is in most danger, is a senator that is living in a ritzy apartment building, if you will, right? So to sort of see, again, you're not only just seeing both sides of this conflict, you're seeing many different classes of people who are dealing with it as well. And I think that's another added layer to this story that does just kind of make it a lot more deep, to the point where, like, we have a watch club coming up, and I had to, like, completely restructure how we talk about this show, but just based off the fact that it isn't as simple as previous Star Wars stories. And I don't mean to, like, I don't mean to put those down in any way. I'm not throwing any sort of shade towards the incredible stories that we've gotten from the previous series, but it's just the way they're written is way more complex and is sort of ebbing and flowing in all different directions, kind of overlapping each other, which is, again, different from the narratives we've gotten.
Yeah, I don't want to say that it's Star Wars for adults. Star Wars is for everybody, but I do think that this show, not necessarily because of lewd or crude or violent content, but I think this show will be a bit more mature than what we're used to seeing in Star Wars.
Obviously, as critics and when we're reviewing this stuff, I try to like think of it on all angles, right? I do admit to like what my own personal opinions are, but I also try to think of like, cool, the parents that are coming into this show with the kids who, you know, they love Baby Grogu and they love the Mandalorian and they love, you know, all the fun stuff of Star Wars. And this show is, I don't really think kids are going to enjoy it that much. I think they might be bored by it. I think it might eventually get to a place where some things happen that are going to be really fun for kids to watch. But for the most part, I kind of do think this is Star Wars for adults, and I think that's okay. I think we have so much Star Wars coming out, and we have so many different places that Star Wars is hitting in so many different ways. I think it's okay. I think kids have their Star Wars still, and there's not going to be any sort of there's still going to be a ton of content for kids to enjoy. We'll have this.
No, I definitely agree with you there, and I think, you know, there is stuff already that is a little, that skews a bit younger. And so that because of this doesn't play a huge role in the overarching story that we already know of Star Wars, especially in that the world of the Skywalker saga. And so I think this can be its own little story that fits in there, but it's not essential viewing. And so if it isn't your cup of tea, you're not going to understand things that happen around it in the bigger story. So I think that's a really neat way for them going forward to be able to try something different like this show, where if it can fit into its own pocket and just stand alone, like you said, Nate, I don't know if you would need to watch any other Star Wars to sort of understand what's happening specifically in this show with these characters. I think they've done a really great job in setting it, you know, apart and on its own. And so that's a really neat thing, a difficult thing I can only imagine, but I think that's really cool, and that allows them to be a bit more lenient with what we sort of have come to expect from Star Wars stories.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like this is Star Wars for George Lucas because it is focusing heavily on the politics, which he always wants to tell. But because he's appealing to a broad audience, he has to kind of trim the fat. Not everyone wants that political thriller or political intrigue aspect to his movies. So this show is really leaning into that aspect. And I think, yeah, again, for adults, and that's fine because kids have so many cartoons and people, they can watch the movies and stuff like that. There's Skywalker sagas for kids. There could be Star Wars outside of that for just adults, and I love
that. I love the idea that he's made Star Wars for kids. He's gone on the record saying Star Wars is for kids. I made it for kids. And now someone's out there being like, well, George, now we're going to make this for you, okay? Now we're going to
he loves his political
intrigue
Come on.
And the politics stuff, and he's going to love everything from Genevieve. I think he's going to be smitten with Mon Mothma scenes.
Well, and in 3 episodes, they've done politics in Star Wars better than he did over 3 movies.
Oh, no! I didn't say it.
No, is that too harsh? Oh, shoot. Now, you know, speaking of, you know, setting itself apart from normal Star Wars, I don't think Jedi are going to be present in this story whatsoever, and yet the Force is still strong with this one. I think our listeners probably are getting the sense that we've really enjoyed what we've seen here. However, was there anything that didn't quite work for you, Nate? I know you mentioned the pacing, but it almost sounds like by episode 3, the show did resolve that. Was there anything, guys, that didn't quite work for you yet that you're maybe hoping will improve as the show goes on?
I guess the only thing that I can possibly think of is again, as refreshing as it is to stay away from the Star Wars tropes, if you will. It will be nice to sort of, I can't wait to see a stormtrooper on screen. You know what I mean? Like, I can't wait to get those little nuggets, those little moments mixed in with the intriguing political grounded characters that we have in this series. I think that's going to be, I think for me, that's what I'm looking forward to a lot, as well as the blend of that. And I just feel like if they don't do it again quickly enough, or enough times, I think this show will be really divisive for fans. I think there's going to be a lot of people out there that are going to just be like, well, it's not Star Wars enough for me. And that's, you know what, if that's the case, again, like you said, Kevin, you don't have to watch it. There's so much more Star Wars that is your Star Wars, and that's okay.
I already feel like by the time the 4th episode happens, there's already enough Star Wars in it, and they're dropping it more frequently. We're being introduced to the world of Star Wars that we were introduced for the first time back in the 70s type thing. So we're working up to that look that we're all familiar with. So I love how, again, by episode 4, you're already getting 2 or 3 more little Star Wars isms throughout the episode while you're continuing to learn more about this new story. So again, I feel like even in that sense, it's going to be a slow burn for it. So I have honestly no qualms with the series so far. I've loved these first 4 episodes, and I cannot wait for more.
Darcy, you kind of hit it on the head what I was thinking but didn't know how to sort of say, and that's in the first 3 episodes that most people are going to get introduced to this week. It is very much its own version of Star Wars, but again, once you get through that introductory movie, like we've almost been calling it today, and get into that 4th episode, then you really do get those flavors of a bit more familiarity, especially with the introduction of a little bit more of the Imperial side of things. And I mean, these uniforms that these members of they're wearing, it's very Thrawn-y in my opinion. I don't know if I'm that's all I could think, and I'm not even a big Thrawn guy, but even I was getting those vibes, and it's like, wow, I'm just so intrigued by the end of that 4 episode to see where things might play in and what they might tease us with. So yeah, I just think, really shifting into not just looking at the first 3, but these first 4 episodes. By the end of that 4th episode, it is just like, holy shit, I want more of this. I want more of it now. I can't wait to see where they're going with this. The story they've set up for Cassian is so exciting. I think it's going to be so much fun to see. They've just done so much to sort of really set us up for this 12-episode season. I think these scores that we're going to give the premiere here are going to be pretty high. But let's find out exactly what they'll be. So today we're going to be giving our scores for the first 4 episodes of Andor on a scale of 1 to 5 Imperial credits.
As you're saying, Kevin, this is very much a build-up. This is a build-up, and it's a slow build-up, but I really think it'll be worth it. The first 3 episodes, as we said, serve as a great arc and introduction to our key players, and the 4th one does just as much of that in 1 episode than the first, just like the first 3.
Absolutely.
And with even more characters. And the pacing, again, won't be for everyone. I think there will be a divide in the fandom, but this series, for myself, has me really excited for a shift in genre for Star Wars. This is very much the spy thriller that was promised, and that's what's so exciting, is that we're getting different. We've seen Marvel play with different genres, and I've kept saying I want Star Wars to play with different genres. This is Star Wars playing with different genres. So if it falters a little bit here and there with pacing or in certain moments, I'm kind of a little more willing to forgive it, because it's their first time really branching out and really pushing for something different. I think Tony Gilroy was the absolute right choice for this. I think it's mature Star Wars that I've been looking for, and I'm intrigued to get back to that feeling that was established in Rogue One. Getting to see the good and bad on both sides of this conflict is something that I think general Star Wars has only lightly touched upon. So I'm happy that we're going to get 22 episodes to see this story unfold. I'm giving this series the first 4 episodes of Andor. If you had asked me after the 3rd episode, I probably would have been in anywhere between like a 3.5 and a 4. But after that 4th episode, I'm all the way at a 4.5 out of 5 Imperial credits, my guy. It is
nice.
It's really good. That 4th episode is really good.
It's really good. I agree. Darce, how about yourself?
I mean, I've only had positive things to say about these first 4 episodes. I've loved the series so far, and I'm really excited to see, again, more of Andor himself, and then all these characters they've introduced in that last episode, and like the stories behind them that we're starting to get. I am immediately wanting more, just like I remember watching Game of Thrones, where you can't wait for the next week to come out to see how or where the story goes next, and I'm getting that same feeling with this show. Again, I'm with you guys saying that the strategy of the 1, 2, 3 release must be watched in a full thing, because like Kevin, I didn't do that myself. So after the first episode, I was very confused. I took a day or 2 and I still couldn't really think what was going on. So that, I think, is the only flaw, is that they broke up the first 3 so that they could be potentially stopped at an almost inopportune time, in my opinion. So the first 4 episodes, with that in mind, I'll be giving a 4.7 out of 5 Imperial credits because, again, so unique, so fresh, and I loved every second of it.
Totally agree with you guys. We've said so much here, so I'll keep this as brief as I can. I think while this is the least Star Wars show we've ever seen, show, movie, anything like that, it's maybe the best Star Wars we've ever seen. Just from these 4 episodes, the writing, the way it's crafted, the focus on character and character development, and really slowly building up a plot that, maybe on paper wouldn't seem all that intriguing or even exciting, but when you're slowly having it build up around you as you're getting into these first 4 episodes, I just couldn't believe how fully engaged I was. And that's especially coming from someone, I've said it so many times, I don't like prequels because I know where things are going to go. Yeah. But I think what story they're telling here won't have anything to do with even Rogue One, and that's exciting for me. This isn't just going to be a huge, long build-up to the start of the movie Rogue One. This is its own story that we don't know what's going to happen. And, as much as by episode 4 I'm fully engaged, I still really don't know what's going to happen, what they're doing, and where all these characters are going to go, and that is so exciting. This might be the best crafted Star Wars, at least in a long time. It won't be for everybody, but I think for fans looking for something a little bit different from their Star Wars, this is exactly what the franchise has been looking for a very long time, and that is super exciting. So yeah, I'm going to go right around with you, Darcy. I might even go a little higher. I'm going to go 4.8 out of 5 Imperial credits, and I'll say it. No, series. But I'll say it right now. If the show can maintain even just where it is now, and I think it's only going to get better, I honestly do, just from seeing trailers and knowing what we've seen and what we haven't seen in these first 4 episodes. This is already building up to a 5 out of 5 show, hands down, no problem. I'm so excited to see it get there, and I really do hope people take our advice, go out, watch those first 3 episodes together as one single event. It really is an event. It is a movie, and it will get you amped up for the rest of this season for sure. Alrighty, well, that is it for our spoiler-free review for the first 4 episodes of Andor. The first 3 are coming to you on Disney Plus on September 21st. Again, a huge thanks to Disney Plus Canada for letting us get the early peek on these so we could gush and share all of our positive thoughts with you ahead of time. If you enjoyed this episode, please feel free to subscribe to us wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you want to write into the show and let us know if you're excited for Andor, or even if you watch it and want to let us know what you thought about the series, you can reach us at wearegeekcentric@gmail.com. Or if that's a little bit too imperial for you and you'd rather rebel, join our fight on Twitter at GeekcentricYT or on Instagram at WeAreGeekcentric. Keep in mind, we have a ton of other great episodes for you to enjoy, including our recent interview with some of the cast from Andor itself. Mm-hmm. Nate and Justin had the chance to chat with Kyle Solar, Denise Goff, Genevieve O'Reilly, and Adria Arjona. Mm-hmm. Those interviews are available for you to watch on our YouTube channel. That's at youtube.com/geekcentric, or to listen to on the podcast feeds. They're awesome. These actors bring so much to these roles and to this show, and so it's really cool to see them sort of gush about how excited they are for everyone to get a chance to see this show. But speaking of the YouTube channel, we have more interviews with some of the biggest talents behind lots of the things we love, like our interview with Alan Silvestri and Glenn Ballard, the maestros behind the music of Pinocchio. Mm-hmm. We also have our interview with Larry the Cable Guy. Nate gets her done, and that was a lot of fun. And our interview with Kat Coiro and Jessica Gao, the brilliant minds behind She-Hulk Attorney at Law. Mm-hmm. All of these interviews are available for you on the YouTube channel to enjoy. There's even a playlist for you to just click on and run through them all. We've got tons of interviews from the last 6 months or so go check those out and get to get a little behind the geek and see some of the faces playing some characters you've grown to love over the last little while. On our podcast, we have new Watch Club starting up for Andor later this week, so stay tuned for that. We also have our ongoing Watch Club for She-Hulk Attorney at Law. Those Watch Club episodes drop every Friday. And finally, we also have our weekly show, This Week in Geek, where we cover the latest news and trailers and everything else happening in the Geekiverse. Now, there won't be an episode this week because we've been getting ready to bring you all of this Andor-related goodness. However, we did drop 3 episodes last week covering all the news and highlights from the D23 Expo in California. We break down the announcements from the animation side to the all-new MCU and Star Wars content, plus we talk about all of the changes coming to the parks, so be sure to check those out and leave a 5-star review if you don't mind. But until next time, gentlemen, thanks for joining me, and thanks to you for tuning in to listen to us. Now, gents, as we sign off, let's remind our wonderful listeners why we do this.
For the greater good.